All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a little talk today. We're having a couple different presentations, and it's all about cybersecurity. If you were in on Justin's presentation earlier, just a few minutes ago, you would have heard about how to educate your employees about cybersecurity. That was kind of the focus of his conversation. In this particular conversation, we're going to talk a little more about how you can defensively protect yourself on a couple of different tools. So we'll go ahead and get started here. First question I want to ask if anybody in the room knows. Does anybody know what a BDR is? So it's a common term in IT, but in a very select area of IT. The B is simply backup. Backup is an electronic copy of your data. It's just quite simple. There's multiple different variants of this. It could be versioned, it could be just a replication, but that is a backup. The DR is disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is the ability to quickly restore critical IT functionality. The key word in that being quickly. If anybody works in IT, or if anybody relies on IT, which pretty much everybody in this room, you realize that when the IT is down, you need it up as fast as possible. If you can't get to the server, if you can't get to the internet, you can't get to your applications. So why do we need it? What's so important about having that backup disaster recovery in place? Well, there's a multitude of reasons. So we'll start out talking about data corruption. Data corruption can come in many forms. It can be caused by many different things. For example, software updates. I know a lot of people are going, wait, software updates aren't supposed to corrupt the data, that's supposed to fix it. I can't tell you how often Microsoft will put out an update that will break something. And then a week later, they'll put out a security patch for that update because they found a vulnerability in it. And then they'll find out that that actually caused a problem as well. And the following week, they'll put out another update. It happens all the time. Sometimes you can roll back on those updates. Sometimes you cannot. When you cannot roll back on those updates, that's where it's a really good time to have that BDR in place because we can always go back to old data. Viruses. Maybe you've heard a few of these. These are viruses that have just been really, really bad viruses. We've got Zeus, SpyEye, Torpig, and IceIX. Viruses do a lot of different things on your computer, but more often than not, they corrupt data and cause corruption. There's also malware. Malware is typically it's malicious intent. It could do anything from going through and sending out emails on your behalf that you don't even know you're sending out. It can cause all kinds of other problems. These are some examples of some. You may have heard of I Love You, Conficker, MyDoom, and Melissa was really hot and running really pretty rampant about a year ago. And then the most common one we see today, which is also one of the worst ones, is ransomware. Ransomware actually encrypts the data on your computer. If you get infected with ransomware on your computer, on your server, depending on what device is corrupted, in a lot of cases, it will spread throughout the entire network and corrupt all of them. You'll get a screen usually that pops up that says your data has been encrypted, and if you want to get your data back, send us X number of dollars or X number of Bitcoin, which is an online currency, and we'll give you the password or the key to unlock that data. There's been a lot of people over the years, last few years that this has really been happening a lot, that have paid the money. And sometimes they get the key, but not always. So you may get the key, you may not get the key, but if you've got a good backup, especially a backup that was an hour ago, how much data are you really losing? The most aptly named, in all honesty, recently, in my opinion, of the ransomware that's out there is WannaCry. I think you can figure out why. That's a great name for it. So why else are we interested? What about missing files? Well, files can be missing for a number of different reasons. It could be something that was just simply deleted on accident. Somebody accidentally hit the delete key. It could be something that was deleted on purpose. Why would it be deleted on purpose? Anybody have an idea why we would delete a file on purpose that we need?
Trying to clear up space.
Perfect, exactly. Great example. So the server's running out of space. We want to make some more space on the server. We don't want to spend money on buying another drive or a larger drive. We delete files, and then later what do we find out? We needed that file. And then you also have deleted by maliciously. So maybe it's a disgruntled employee that's leaving. Maybe somebody just had a really bad day and decided to play a really bad prank on one of their coworkers and deleted some of their files. Again, without a backup disaster recovery solution or some form of backup that you can pull that information back out, it's gone. If it's deleted, it's gone. We also have hardware failures. Hardware failures come in a lot of different ways, and it can be caused by several different things. It could be just a hard drive. It just got old and it died. They stopped spinning at a certain point and they just don't work anymore. The bearings wear out. It could be any other component in that server that just failed. Or it could be from something like a power spike or a brownout. It could be, it's interesting. I've had people ask me that before about brownouts. It's like, well, I get a power spike, but why would a brownout cause a problem? Brownout is actually a reduction in power instead of a spike of power. That reduction can corrupt or destroy electronics just as easily as a spike can. And then, of course, there's the other things that we can't necessarily control. For example, environmental accidents. So give me an example of environmental issues. What would we have? Hurricane Harvey, great example. Just happened, right? So it's fresh on everybody's minds, and we saw the amount of damage that was created in that scenario. So we have stuff like tornadoes. We have fire, flood, hurricane, as we mentioned previously, earthquake, and lightning, of course, which is the biggest power spike that you're going to possibly see. So, what's the answer? Is there an answer? There are, and the answer comes in a multitude of different flavors. So, we heard Justin this morning again talking about educating the employees and educating on what to look for in malicious emails or in socially engineered attacks. That's one facet. You have antivirus, you have anti-malware, we've got firewalls. There's all kinds of things we have in place. One of the most important, in my opinion, is the BDR, the backup disaster recovery. So historically, backup and disaster recovery has been in two different solutions. So we've had backup devices, and then we've also had disaster recovery devices. Sometimes they work well together, sometimes they do not. They did not. But if either one of them fail, you could be into the same situation as if you're just down. Nothing's working. So, we spent a lot of time researching in the industry. We've researched software. We've researched hardware. We've looked at everything and every possibility out there as far as what is our best solution. What we have found as far as Datamax and our employees is Datto. Datto is a complete backup disaster recovery solution. I'm going to tell you this product is actually amazing. We talk about image-based backup. So image-based backup, for example, instead of just backing up the Excel file and the Word file or the PDF, the image-based backup is actually going to take basically a picture of the hard drive. What it's going to do for us is it gives us a full backup. The files, the operating system, the configurations, it's all included in that backup. And one of the things that Datto does is called advanced screenshot verification. This is a really cool tool. So what happens is, imagine this, your server gets a backup taken, it takes that image that we were talking about, and then the Datto itself is actually a server as well. So it takes that image and it spins it up, and it loads that image on the Datto device so that it could run as a server. Once it boots up, it takes a screenshot of the login screen and it sends it to us. That way we know that backup is valid and good. Because the alternative is the way it used to be done, which is we'd take backups and we had two choices. We could check them on a regular basis and make sure that the backup is valid, which is very tedious and time consuming, or we could just trust that they work. And we don't know until it's too late. So we find out when something actually fails and we go and guess what? Well, that backup wasn't any good. Now we're going to go back another week. Oh, that one's bad too. Oh, this hadn't backed up for 3 months. How many of you business owners could afford to lose 3 months of data for your business? Probably not very many. Direct Restore Utility is a piece of the Datto that actually allows us to take individual file recovery as well. So we talked about the fact that it's an image, so we could spin up the whole server, it's the entire thing. Well, with the Direct Restore Utility, it actually allows us also to grab an individual file and restore that as well. So if you decided to update your Excel document and instead of a save as, you save over the original one, we can now go back and pull that original one and still have that data without being lost. Ransomware detection. Now this is very cool. Ransomware detection, I have looked, now I'm not going to say that it does not exist, but as far as I've researched this, I've looked into this, I have not found another BDR solution that has ransomware detection. It's actually only been available for about 4 months, and what it does, it actually is scanning the backups and looking for a footprint of ransomware. If it finds that something that looks like it may be ransomware, the footprint, it'll actually alert the administrator so that we can investigate it. It may not be ransomware. There is a chance that it gives a false positive. But I'd rather check out and find out than just simply not know it all until it's too late. So it's a great tool there as well. And again, I'm not going to say nobody else has it, but Datto's the only one that I know of personally that actually does in fact have ransomware detection. Next thing I want to talk about a little bit here is the local and off-site. Your backup disaster recovery solution should not only have a backup in the cloud so that it's off-premise. That way, if, for example, we do have a hurricane that was mentioned earlier and it takes out that building, well, that's great. So it was on the server and it's on the backup device and they're both underwater and destroyed, the data's gone. So we back it up in the cloud as well. That cloud is basically a server somewhere else. Now, on the same respect, we don't want to just back up to the cloud either, because in the event that we lose our internet connection, we can't reach that data, and if we need it, now we're still out of luck. With Datto, we actually have both. So we have a local as well as a cloud-based backup solution. And that cloud-based backup solution also has what's called Geo Replication. So that means it's not just in the cloud and I'm going to make up a state because it could be anywhere, right? It's not just backed up in Montana in a data center somewhere. It's backed up in more than one location. That could be more than one location, one inside the U.S., 2 inside the U.S., maybe another one outside in Europe. Multiple options. We need it to be in multiple locations because something the size of a hurricane also, if your office is in Galveston and your cloud is in Houston, we just had a hurricane come through and took them both out. Still could lose all the data. Last but not least, time-based or infinite cloud retention. So these are both different options with Datto. We can have infinite, we can save your data forever. Or it can also be time-based, which is a more budget-friendly option where the data is there for a certain period of time, for example, 1 year, and then it just overwrites with the new data coming in a year later. Any questions so far? All right. So next I want to talk about, we've actually got 2 gentlemen with us today that are on the phone with us, and they're going to be taking this over. We've got Leif McKinley, which is our channel account manager, as well as we've got Chris Warren, which is a technical sales engineer. They're going to cover a couple things with you today. They're going to give you an introduction to Datto, tell you a little bit about Datto and the company. But we're also going to do a device overview. We're going to talk about how easy it is to restore a single file, and they're actually going to show you that. And they're actually going to virtualize a server during this demonstration just to show you how fast it can be done. We're going to take a server, simulate that server died, and we're going to spin that server up as a virtual server, all within this next demonstration. And then we're also going to talk about agent settings. So, Leif, Chris, I appreciate you guys being here today. Are you guys there?
Yes, we certainly are. Thank you very much. We appreciate the introduction. How's everyone doing?
I think everybody's doing great today.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having us come out today. Sorry that we could not be there in person, but we're glad to be able to connect with you through this video and definitely show you, give you a little introduction about the solution, about Datto as a company, and show you how Datto can help you in terms of reaching your specific RPOs and RTOs. And I'm going to explain to you what exactly that means in a minute. But that's the goal of this call here. Now, to give you a little bit of background on Datto, Datto is a company that has about 900 employees now. We started in 2007, so we're very, very fast growing. And we have 9 offices worldwide as well as 9 data centers that we replicate off to. Now, the 2 that we're going to be speaking to are in the U.S. They're U.S.-based. We've got one in Reading, Pennsylvania, and one out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, when it comes to data, we got our start with business continuity. And this presentation is geared around cybersecurity. You're probably wondering, cybersecurity, business continuity, what does that have to do? And Lee did a great job of explaining this. Cybersecurity, you have all these tools in place to help avoid any cybersecurity attacks. Your firewalls, your routers, those types of tools. However, data is the business continuity aspect of that, which is the last line of defense, because ultimately, nothing is going to protect you 100%. And so when something does get through, and it is a question of when, not if, you want to make sure that you have a solution in place that's going to provide you with the protection that you need. Now that then gets me into the device, because what our device does is it allows you to reach these RPOs and RTOs that I mentioned. Now, an RTO is what we call recovery time objective. And that is how long a company can afford to be down before it affects your bottom dollar. Now, if you are a company where if you are down for an hour, your revenues are starting to be affected, your overhead becomes too much, that's affecting your bottom dollar. And so we need to figure out what time period is going to really affect you and your revenues. Recovery point objective is looking at how much data can you afford to lose. So if you're in a company where over the course of 3 hours you create too much data to be able to lose 3 hours worth of data, we need to make sure that we are backing up a solution more frequently than 3 hours. So recovery time objective is looking at the restore capabilities of the solution, and the recovery point objective is looking at the protection of the solution. How frequently are we able to protect you with the solution? Now, as we go through the device, you're going to see that we're going to be able to provide you with best-in-breed RTO and RP. And this is important because as a user of the solution, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what user you are, even no matter what servers you're using, you're going to have unique RPOs and RTOs. And it could be unique all the way down to that individual server. Well, our solution is going to show you how you can meet those requirements with one backup device. So with that, I really want to hand it on over to Chris. He's going to walk through and give you the presentation of the data solution. I'm going to jump in every now and then to point out certain things, but Chris is going to show you how you can utilize the data solution to not only reach those RTOs that you have, but also protect you and cover you to reach those RPOs. So with that, Chris, take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Leif. All right, good morning to all you folks down there in Texas. What I want to do today is give you guys kind of a very high-level overview, demonstration of our Sears product line. That's like our flagship unit here at Data. It really does encompass anything and everything we have to offer from like a disaster recovery, business continuity perspective. So what you're looking at right now is I'm interfacing with a physical data appliance here on-prem that's performing my backups of all my critical servers and workstations and virtual machines. I'm actually interfacing to it through its local IP address up here in my address bar.
And Chris,
that you're looking at right here is the home page.
Hey Chris,
yes.
1 second real quick. Yeah, just you mentioned a term I just want to make sure that everybody is familiar with. He said on-prem. So when we say on-prem, we're referring to on-premise. That is a piece of hardware that is on the same location or on the physical network that we're on. So we typically refer to on-prem as the same as on-site, or off-prem would be cloud-based, so on and so forth. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yep, clarification is good. Yep, so sorry, I should have said on-premise, but yes. Okay, so I'm actually right now on a home screen, and what this screen that you're looking at is, it just kind of gives you a good overview of what's going on that data appliance that's on your network, in terms of what's being backed up, how much information's been backed up, what's being synced out to the data centers, stuff of that nature. You can kind of see here, it constantly is updating. You can see here, you have like a little pie chart, I like to call it a donut chart, for better lack of a different term, lists out all the different environments that are currently being backed up to that data appliance. You can see a couple different servers in here, workstations and virtual machines. We do use something called, you're going to hear the term agent a little bit throughout the presentation, and I know it was mentioned earlier. And the reason we use the term agent is because there is agent-based software that gets installed in each one of these environments It's just so it can properly communicate with that data appliance in terms of like, when's the next scheduled backup? What's changed since the last backup? Things of that nature. It's more like a town crier, if you will, or that particular environment that you're backing up. That allows us to efficiently and effectively decipher what needs to be backed up the next go around. So let's jump into the Restore tab, right up here across the top of my menu bar. This is definitely what gets folks the most excited about the data products from a business continuity perspective. Not only the ease of use, it's a really simple UI. There's just 3 columns here. The first column, choose a system. These are all the different servers and workstations and virtual machines that I'm backing up to that data device. Second column, choose a recovery. So these are all the types of restoration I can do for that particular environment that I've been backing up. And let's say I want to do a file restore, like a random file restore. Okay, I leave the file inadvertently, it became corrupt, whatever the case would be, I want to revert back to a different version of the file. What happens now is that third column populates with a drop down of all my successful backups for me to choose from. And you can see in here, and I'll show you what is reflected later, essentially I'm doing hourly backups of each business day during the work week. You can see here it's went from 8 a.m. up to 12. Yesterday, it goes from 8 a.m. up to 6 p.m., and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is choose my latest backup from today, start file restore, and what happens is it just goes through a quick little mounting process so you can access the files from that particular recovery point. So the checkboxes provide you with a secondary method of accessing those files via web interface. So what does that mean? Essentially what this does, it gives you the ability to be able to go back and restore files to somebody that's off-site, like they're not on the network at that point. Maybe they're out traveling, they're home sick, they're on a business work trip, whatever the case may be. Bottom line is they can't get back into your network. So this just gives them the ability to do that. So this is another facet of being able to pull information if you need it. Versatility really is key, as you'll notice here as I run through these different options. More often than not, though, you're going to grab the Saba share. So really what this is just a path going directly to that recovery point on that data appliance where all your backups reside. I'm going to copy that, just paste it right in my search bar, or open up Windows Explorer and put it in my address bar. And there's the C drive from that particular backup. So this is what my C drive looked like at that point in time when I pulled the backup from it. I can cruise down through the directories, grab any files and folders I want, copy and paste where needed. Very simple, sleek, and easy. It's a UI that we're all familiar with for the most part. It's just Windows Explorer. There's that IP address of the data appliance that we're playing around with that I showed you at the beginning of the demo. That's the timestamp I chose in that drop down, which showed all the different recovery points that I had to choose from. And then the C drive going to the directories right in here. Okay, so next what I want to show you folks is the local virtualization aspect. It's like really what this is. This is really like the highlight of the Cirrus product line. So this is the ability to spin up a virtual environment based upon a particular backup, all locally on the data device. So this really is your business continuity in a nutshell. It's kind of like it's actually using the data device as a placeholder while that production machine is down. So maybe that server is acting funky, it's loose screen, something's become corrupt on it. But you know what? Like you don't have time for that. Like let IT worry about that, get that server reimaged or whatever it is. But you need to continue the workflow. There's this continuity. So all the backups that I perform of that particular critical server on my data device, I have the ability to spin up a local virtualization, a clone, if you will, that would 100% mimic what that production machine's role was on a day in and day out basis. Choose the recovery point, like I just did previously for the file restore. Once again, I'm going to choose my latest one, start virtualization. It brings you to a resources page where it's going to do its best to mimic the resources that were allocated on that particular environment that you chose to virtualize. It's going to be manipulating over here in the local options. So like you have your CPU cores, you have your system RAM, how much memory you want to allocate to this particular environment that you're spinning up. It will grandfather in anything that you've set up in here previously, so it's not like you need to reinvent the wheel every time you come in. Up here, available resources. So what that means is these are the resources that are available on the data appliance that we're currently playing around with right now. And you might have noticed at some point, this 12.5 gigs was originally at 16.5 gigs, or 16,500 megabytes. It jumped down to 12,500 megabytes. It's because I allocated 4,000 megabytes of RAM to this particular VM we're spinning up. It literally just pulled right out of that pool there. That's why you saw the numbers drop. Down here, you have networking options. So you can do things like disconnected from your network, like I am right now. Essentially what I'm doing here is I just want to spin up this virtual machine, sure that like files and folders and apps are all in place, sure that it's bootable, but I don't have a conflict with something else on my network. You can also do things like firewall on a private subnet with or without internet access. So forget that term. Really what that means is it's like a sandboxing type of solution, which more or less means, let's say for example, you get a new application or an upgrade to an existing application. And before you integrate it into your production machine, you want to ensure that it plays well in the sandbox with all those existing applications. It's like you can create a test lab of sorts, if you will. More often than not, though, you can do something called bridge to primary NIC. And what that really means is you're going to create a full-on reflection of that end user's day in and day out work experience, same look and feel, just as if you're just coming in and booting up their computer, and have all those same connectivity options at your fingertips. Make any changes to anything on this page, you click apply to make it stick. That's reflected over here. Click that little start VM button you saw me press when we first came in here. You have a cool little preview pane so you can see what's going on in the background. And all it's doing is it's going through a process of spinning up that VM and mounting itself to the machine you're interfacing with. And then you're given a couple different methods as to how are you going to interact with this virtual machine that you just created. You're going to click on this connect via RDP. What that does is it downloads a link like anything else you download over the internet. You can launch it from there. Or you can click on the screenshot preview, and what that will do is open up a new tab within your web browser. Boom, once you authenticate, you're on the desktop, business as usual, same as everyone else. And the cool thing about these virtual environments is that while users are working here, and you or whomever else is working on the production machine to get it up to snuff, the scheduled backups will continue, just as if this was that production machine that you had originally been backing up all along. So the example there being, the end of the day comes. You realize that production server is hosed. It's defunct, it needs to be re-imaged, whatever the case may be. At least from a proprietary data set standpoint, all those revisions that your user base has been making all day long have been captured within this virtual environment. So that gives you the ability to do some stuff I'm going to touch on in a little bit, things like bare metal restore, which is re-imaging back to a physical appliance that basically you've got to reinstall something on a new computer you just got, or exporting images back into a virtual environment if you're running Hyper-V or VMware, or whatever's being hosted from a virtualization standpoint. Or just continue to virtualize off the data appliance itself and have that assurance there'll be gaps in the workflow. And now we also do offer the ability to spin up virtually in the cloud. So whatever that last sync you had, right, you can create a virtual environment just like this based off that last cloud replication. And that's like when you're full on disaster recovery mode. Production servers, data devices, they've all become compromised. You've got somewhere comfortable for your computer, internet access, contact your tech support. Tech support is going to give you a few different methods of spinning up virtually to the cloud. So a few buzzwords, that's like IP addresses, RDP instructions, secure VPN tunnels. But the bottom line is there's multiple layers of safety nets to ensure business continuity.
So, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just want to point something out real quick. If anybody in the room has ever had a server actually die, I mean, we're talking about it's actually dead, it's not running, and you've got to get it spun up. Traditional bringing that server back up is most people don't have a spare server just laying around, so it's buying a server. If you go with the traditional type of backup, it's buying a server. It is then loading the operating system, configuring the operating system. Typically, you're going to then load your applications, you're going to configure your applications, and then you're going to go through and make all your little tweaks. That process, depending on whether you have to wait for a piece of equipment to be shipped in or if you're running up to the store to buy one, could be anywhere from days to even weeks in some cases, depending on what kind of server it is. What you guys were just looking at there a second ago on that screen, that was not the server. That was the virtualized server on the Datto device. That's how long it actually took to bring that server back up. I didn't time it, but I'm going to say it was under about 5 minutes. So just wanted to point out the fact that he's not showing you the server, he's showing you the server image on the Datto device. That's how quickly we can actually have a server back up and running in a matter of minutes as opposed to hours, days, or even weeks. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Some folks might refer to it as like a plug and play like type scenario. That's why I was saying you're using this Datto appliance as a placeholder while production is down, so you continue to have that good workflow. And I just want to touch on these guys here before we talk about configuration stuff, so that you kind of understand what's going on here. But once again, the key word is versatility and flexibility. Virtualizing the cloud and virtualizing a hypervisor. What we're doing here is we're just giving you a few other facets of being able to pull resources from other environments, so that you can have multiple VMs running in tandem. That's why you see these guys here. And then down here, what you're looking at down here, these are different ways that you can restore. So basically, get information back onto either a physical appliance or back into a virtual environment to get those production machines back up and running again. So ESX upload, like this is basically transferring a virtual formatted file back into a hypervisor environment. Basically, if you're running VMware, this is just creating a direct link to do a restore back into that hypervisor where your virtual machines are hosted. Bare metal restore, that's essentially like re-imaging back to a physical piece of hardware. So the example there being, you get a new computer, or because the old computer is on the fritz or it's outdated or whatever the case may be, this is re-imaging back to a physical piece of hardware, giving you the same look and feel, applications, shortcuts, what have you, exact same look and feel visually from that old environment to the new environment.
So Chris, we're running a little short on time, so this is great information. One thing I did want to ask you to touch on real quick, we don't necessarily need to go to the screen, but can you tell them a little bit about the restore point, so we can set it to basically all the way down, I believe, to 5 minutes?
Sure. Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to go back into Protect, and you'll notice here, so on this page here, it's giving me a list once again of all those environments that I'm backing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Configure Agent Settings for one of them. Okay, so we'll do C4 and 2 PC. That's my local desktop here at Data that we're actually interfacing with right now. If I go down here in your local backup retention policy, this is where you choose at first, how often you're going to perform backups of that environment that you're backing up. So first you're setting the intervals as to when you want to perform your backups. Most people will do hourly backups during business hours, and that's reflected right here. 1 hour intervals. You can go all the way down to 5-minute intervals if you like. It's definitely overkill for me and most folks, but hey, you know what? If your society needs it necessary, or you have a highly transactional server, or some security policy in place, we give you the ability to do that. And when you click on custom settings, this just reflects as to when those intervals are going to actually occur. So for me, it's a typical business model. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's when I'm in the office making proprietary data set changes, so that's when I'm going to perform my hourly backups. And then same concept down here for cloud backup protection policy. So same concept as above, but I'm actually talking about how often am I going to replicate out to the data centers. I'm going to do it once a day like most masses. You can do it as often as you like, as you can see in here. And then even custom scheduling, if you want to determine what hours and days of the week that you are going to actually offsite. I always recommend, do it at the end of the day for a couple of reasons. A, you're not competing with bandwidth during business hours while folks are in the office. B, most importantly, everything aggregated throughout that workday gets replicated overnight. So in the event of an overnight catastrophe, you can take solace in the fact that the following morning, you should be able to pick up right from where you left off from that previous night's cloud replication.
So I think it's safe to say the flexibility is absolutely there with Datto. So I just wanted to see if, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. It was very informative. Does anybody have any questions for myself or for Datto or anything else today? No? All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a great day. Leif, Chris, I really appreciate your time today. Hope you all have a great day.
Perfect. Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.